And one. How you doing, folks? You're watching On Order with Onrie. I'm your gracious host, Onrie Compen. Today, I have an outstanding guest in the house. Everybody, please welcome Travis McINTIRE, the editor-in-chief of SourcePoint Press. Welcome to the show. First and foremost. And I just want to say, we were just talking about it backstage. I am a huge fan of what you guys are doing. I think you guys are putting out beautifully produced books. I think you are bringing a lot of creators to the center stage who have been needing a home for their titles for a long while and getting it out into the masses, not just at conventions, but also hitting up the direct market and making it work. And I just want to give you a chance to, introduce yourself for people who don't know you and, let you know how excited I am to have you in the house today.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I think I appreciate that. And I appreciate you, kind of noticing the type of creators that we pull in. Those are the creators that we look for. Kind of people like what you and I talked about before, creators who are out there doing it themselves anyway. And our whole shtick is like, look, if you're the type of person that can grind like that and make it happen, then we're the type of people that can help you do that a little bit better and a little bit more efficiently. My background is in indie comics. It's been indie comics from the beginning. I got my start publishing my first book with Caliber Comics, run by Gary Reed. I kind of became, I ran their social media for a little while. I became friends with Gary, and as I sort of progressed, I realized that I was mediocre as a writer. I was okay, but I was never going to be great. But I did seem to be great at project managing and shepherding other people's stuff along, and helping people get to the finish line with things. And so he's kind of the guy who, him along with Josh Werner, who was one of the founders of SourcePoint, were kind of the people who sort of pushed me in the direction of becoming what I am, which is, editor-in-chief. And, I still dabble, I still write a little bit here and there, but for the most part, the thing I like the best is helping people make the best possible version of their product that they can.
That in itself is an art form and is extremely important. And it's hard to make those realizations. I think that it's like, I also consider myself a very mediocre writer, and I have to, constantly work at it to get to a point where I can be happy with what I turn in. But, it's certain things that you kind of notice where your traits lie. Like I always wanted to draw, but I'm a shitty artist. It's just, you just realize these kinds of things and you fall into the right area. And, I knew Gary, like I mentioned, and, Gary Reed was just a phenomenal guy. Like I said, and like I'll say to everybody right now, he was the kind of person who would always lend an ear to fellow creators. He, like Travis was saying, is the godfather of independent comics. And, I think you're definitely carrying on that legacy. And it's so great that you were able to, learn from one of the best, I think.
Oh yeah. Without a doubt. He was a guy who he had been through so many different layers of the industry, from self-publishing his own stuff to he owned one comic store, and then he owned 4 comic stores, and then having a publisher where he was trying, because he got started trying to kind of just help. In the 80s, it was like 84, 85. Arrow Comics was where he was just trying to kind of help those guys out, and then that became Caliber, after he got involved. So from that level up to publishing books with Image and publishing books with IDW, and having negotiating deals to have books carried at, they're one of the first. A lot of people don't know, but in the early 2000s, Caliber books were one of the first books that were ever being carried in mass market, which is what I mean by like Walmart, big box stores. They were carrying their line of like their version of Frankenstein and Dracula and stuff like that. So he like ran the gamut of all the different things you can do, and I think that's one of the things I really took away from him is this idea of, it isn't just about like, and this very well, but but it isn't just about like, well, I made my comic and now I just got to get it into Diamond and then I'm no, that's bullshit. You know, it's like you got to figure out, like, that's step one. You know what I mean? Like that's
step 0.5, dude.
Yeah,
like,
or that
yeah,
step you could skip it even if you wanted to. I mean, we skipped it for a long time. For 3 years, we didn't do Diamond at all. We just did conventions. But I mean, you know, that's just the first part. Is like you get this, all right, your book comes out. Now you gotta now the real work starts, right? Now you gotta market and travel and grind, and you gotta do your best to like increase the shelf life of this book for as long as you possibly can. You know, like you got to get it past our business's 6 weeks that they want to give you and force it to be longer than that and force it into more people's hands as much as you possibly can, you know. So I think that's something I really learned from Gary was like, just like keep looking for different avenues, you know, like people are there, people want to read books. Like that's not ever going to change. You have to find them. You have to find them. So, and I think that's kind of what we got good at is finding people who want to read our books, you know.
absolutely. And you know, the one thing I got to say too is, you know, the fact that you get that there's this side of the business is not what most people who get into comics really kind of like say, really picture themselves doing. You know, everybody kind of approaches the comic book industry from a creative aspect, like I'm going to letter or I'm going to write. And you mentioned that you write as well on the side, but this was really where you kind of found your passion. But now I want to ask, what are your origins? What is your origin story? How'd you fall into comics and how did that lead to a blooming career in the field?
Well, so I went to school in Kalamazoo, Michigan. 1998 to 2001, I went to Western Michigan University for creative writing. And while I was there, you know, I did all the usual college stuff. And, you know, met a ton of creative people, played in bands, did all the usual types of things. I was always a huge fan of comics. Didn't really think of that as what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do was more like, I really wanted to be like a guy who wrote, you know, big science fiction trilogies and that kind of thing. You know, that was really what I thought I was going to do. Because I was also really in physics. I took a lot of physics classes. I ended up with a minor. So I get out of school and I start trying to, you know, you've left the confines of the university press and all that. And, you know, now I'm out there and I'm trying to do a thing. And I realized I didn't really know anything about it. And I wasn't having any luck whatsoever. So I needed work. So a friend of mine, you know, got me my first job at a scientific organization. And I did that for a few years. And then I bounced to another one. And I did that for a few years. And then I bounced to a very, very large, one of the largest scientific organizations in the world. I became a research scientist. So I did that for a long, long time, which I suppose kind of explains my very like analytical and step-by-step mindset that I approach everything with. And then comics was still just a hobby. I was actually like a pretty heavy collector of Silver Age Marvel keys. I had pretty much every key from that era that you can name. And then my first son was born, and it was this really weird. I don't know how deep you want to get into this, but
as deep as you're willing to go. Let's jump into that rabbit hole. But you know, I don't want to force anything out of you. But
so
please.
The birth of my first son was very difficult, and I mean difficult for me. You can imagine my wife probably much worse.
Dude, it was hard for me too, man.
Several days. Ended up being an emergency C-section.
Mine was a C-section too, and my kid was born in Kazakhstan. So, but please go continue. I'm sorry. I'm relating to you.
So there was a lot of stress. so you're kind of standing there. I'm holding her hand, and they're cutting her open, and they pull the baby out, and you're just like, I remember, like, as soon as they pull them out, the first thing I thought was like, I thank fucking God I'm not on mushrooms right now. This is already.
Oh, that's awesome.
This is already such the potential to be such a bad trip. And, the whole thing was just super surreal. And then the nurse takes this baby, and he was huge. He was 10 pounds 11 ounces. It was
damn, that is a big baby.
Yeah, he looked like Shrek. It was that's part of the reason why they were having such a hard time with him. So they take him over, they put him like they're cleaning him up, and the nurse like calls me over, and I come walking over there, and I just feel a little shell shocked by the whole thing.
Sure.
Right? And I'm like, reach my hand out, and he grabbed a hold of my pinky, and like in that moment, my entire life changed. Right?
Absolutely.
And then for me, the way that it changed was that, like, if I'm honest with myself, I was always an extremely self-centered person, in the way that I think many people are.
I consider myself to be very self-centered.
Yeah,
it's natural.
I certainly still am, but like, what this did is it made me. It was the first time in my life that I wasn't the most important thing in my life. And I think for a lot of people, like, they get hit with this like wave of like responsibility, and they find it crushing or anything. For me, I found it very freeing, because I've always been somebody who suffered from mild depression. I've always been somebody who has to take medication for anxiety and things like this. So when my first son was born, it was all of a sudden I wasn't the top thing, and all of a sudden I didn't have to like judge myself so harshly anymore, because it was like it crystallized my whole life. It crystallized everything into like, you have one job now. Like, you have one prime directive, and it's to take care of this thing. And anything else beyond that doesn't really fucking matter. So for me, this was like very freeing, in that, like, I don't have to worry that much about failing or being this thing or being that thing or making X amount of dollars. I only need to do what this thing needs, and I can do that a million different ways. And so from there, it was like, what have I really always wanted to do? Well, I really want to get into the comics business. I feel like I could write comics. I feel like I could be involved with comics. So like, I immediately started trying to do that, and that led to everything else.
Dude, that's amazing, because that I felt the exact opposite kind of what you felt. Like,
I think a lot of people feel the exact opposite.
Well, because the thing is I think we're all self-centered, because guess what? We can't leave our own bodies. We can only care about other things to us. It only goes to a set point. But when it's your kid, it does truly take on this other form, because you are responsible for them. And the thing for me has always been that comics that's my full-time grind. It can't change because I have a kid. And, I've had to really be creative about how to actually make that happen. And I admire the fact that you were able to do the complete opposite, that you said, I just have to worry about this kid now, and I can still pursue the things that matter to me. And you took that and you ran with it. And I think that's really cool. Okay. So from there, what kind of comics did you read? Like, what was the comic you picked up and said, like, all right, cool. Like, this is what I'm going to go to college for. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, kind of a thing.
So, my favorite comic of all time is Sandman.
Right on.
Game Sandman. That's right up there with stuff like, Hellboy was very formative for me, growing up in Michigan and being into underground comics at the time. The Crow, Dead World, these were very influential on me. But if I'm 100% honest, and I would have to say that when I was 12 years old and 1991, most of the comics I bought, because there wasn't a comic book store near me, where I grew up. So most of the comics I got were from a Carl's supermarket. And every time we went to go grocery shopping, I was allowed to get one. And I really think that the most, at the time, you know, I remember very clearly when Infinity Gauntlet started to be released. The 6.
Yeah.
And I remember that was awesome because, you know, as a 12-year-old, I had a few different ways that I judged things. You know, one was how many characters were on the cover, and those books had a ton of stuff going on.
Yes, they did. Yes,
And
they
two,
did.
They were really big. Now they were more expensive. I want to say they were like $1.25 at the time, and the regular comics were 75 cents. But that was, I remember very clearly that was sort of the first time in my life that I realized monthly aspect of comics, right? Like I every fourth time back to the supermarket, I could get the next Infinity Gauntlet, and that became something that was important to me, is to make sure I got the next one. So that was probably my first time kind of it clicking in my head what a comic was. And I think, you know, I certainly would not consider myself someone who was like ever write superhero books. I definitely leaned more towards, you know, stuff like Hellboy or stuff like, you know, Sandman or whatever. But in terms of like the rituals of comics, it started with in the early 90s with Infinity Gauntlet was sort of the first big thing for me.
Well, I think the thing about Marvel and DC stuff is, you know, like, because I've kind of fallen down that same kind of like trajectory in the sense that like if I get paid a lot of money to write superheroes, hey, I'll be writing superheroes. But otherwise, it's not really where my passion's really directing me. But those books, they did so much more than just tell stories about superheroes. You know, they found ways to engage you, utilizing all kinds of different you know, models from different genres and things like that to make it engaging, you know. And certainly Infinity Gauntlet was like the epic Star Wars event in the Marvel universe at the time. Now it's just its own thing because of what they did with the movies, but you know.
Right. Yeah, I mean it's I mean, at the time I would have never imagined anything like what it became.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, you know, let's take this, you know, now down more to what you're doing currently. So, as the editor-in-chief of this, you know, enterprise you're running, Source Point Press, you're not only responsible for going to shows. And when we were backstage, you said that you guys did like 70 shows last year. You were planning to do 70 shows this year. Mm-hmm. And, you know, this is obviously a really important aspect of how you run your business, but it's not the only way you do it. You guys are also distributing through Diamond, which in and of itself is an extremely huge undertaking for anyone, because you're not selling retailers Marvel and DC. You are selling them new stuff from new creators. What has that experience been like for you? And, you know, fill us in on that.
So for us, I don't want to. I mean, as anybody who's watching this probably realizes, like a lot of distribution is very much in flux right now, and there's a lot shifting and moving, and I don't necessarily know where that's all going to lay out. But so for us, the way it worked was that we just toured and show after show after show after show after show, basically every weekend of the year. The most I personally ever did was 42 conventions in 1 year. And that, you know, that's me personally at a show.
And I'm going to tell you something right now. The most I've ever done is 20. So the fact that you've managed to do double that with a wife, with a full-time job, and children on top of that, because you have 2 kids now, you were mentioning.
2, yeah, 7 and 6. 7 and 6. Yeah,
that is a lot.
Yeah, I mean, without my wife, without her, none of this would have been even remotely possible. But I think that that's true for almost all of us who are out there on the grind, one way or another. Like, if there's not somebody who's behind us, sort of propping us up, we would never make it. So we were doing that for a couple of years, and then you know, for us, getting into Diamond was just because we were, you know, we become friends with a bunch of people who worked at Diamond, you know, from the road. And finally I was out, you know, I'm having some drinks. I had dinner with Josh Jeppy, and he asked me, he's like, hey, you know, this book and this book, how are you guys doing with those? And I told him, like, well, we did 8,000 units of this one this year. And, you know, this one, you know, these books over here, we've done around 12,000 units over the past 2 years, which for indie comics, that's a ridiculous.
No, that dude, those are super fucking high numbers for one book, because you're not just pushing one book, you're pushing multiple books. And the fact that you can go and hit all these shows and move 8,000 units, I don't think people realize how big that is. That is so, that's huge.
Yeah. And again, it's over the course of several months.
It doesn't matter. It's the fact that it's still out there, you know?
And he was like, you know, why aren't you distributing with Diamond? And I was like, well, you know, we haven't had the opportunity to do so, this and that. And, you know, so Josh helped us get set up. And there were some bumps in the road. But for us, and I know that there's a ton of retailers who have their issues. I know that there's a lot of other small press publishers who have their issues with Diamond. For us, Diamond has been really good to us. You know, we had some bumps in the road early on. You know, our brand manager now, she's been amazing. I feel like she pays attention to all of our releases. She follows, you know, she reads our books. You know, she helps us plan things. You know, for me, I don't have a lot to complain about in terms of Diamond and the business and the work that they did for us and the amount of push that they've given us. But, you know, I think you kind of have to approach it realistically and be like, well, you know, Diamond is a business that, one, they don't have a real competitor. And if you don't have a real competitor, then you're probably not going to evolve as well as you should to changing aspects of the marketplace. And two, they're in a business where the vast majority of it is controlled by two companies, right? So it's not in their best interest necessarily to push a bunch of things that aren't going to make them as much money and not keep their employees paid and do all the things that a business has to do. So for us, we never really changed what we did. We still did all the shows. We still did all the grind. We still did all.
Yeah, it wasn't an either or thing. Yeah.
No,
this was supplemental.
Is we went into Diamond and we treated it like it was a supplemental thing.
That's smart.
This was never going to become our business, and it never really did. You know, right up until Diamond, you know, kind of closed down over the last month and a half. It never really changed, you know, for us. So while we did well and we had some books do extremely well with Diamond, the issue that you run into is that you need these shops to buy your stuff. And so we were very, very good. And I talked to hundreds of retailers about this, and many of them would be like, yeah, I order a couple of the bridge for us that we always struggled with was not, they heard of us. Like, yeah, I order, you know, half your line, you know, I order maybe 2 or 3 copies because I got that, because we were very good at getting hardcore fans. We were really good at getting fans who would go into their store and be like, hey, I want this and this, put it on my list, right? We were having trouble making the jump from order us for the people who are ordering it and then order a few extra for the shelf. You know, that's where we were struggling. And, you know, that I think it would be fair to say that's still where we're struggling, is trying to get over that hump. You know, I memean, there's still, even during the height of Walking Dead, there were 12% of all comic book stores didn't carry Walking Dead, right? Like that's a book that was regularly outselling everything by Marvel and DC. So that's the mountain you have to climb with some retailers to get them to pay attention to smaller presses or independent books or things like that. So it's a tough challenge. And, you know, we tried a lot of different things. that I think other publishers didn't do, and we had some luck, you know. For instance, just to give you some numbers, Diamond claims it has 2,800 some accounts. Of those, if you eliminate, online type stuff like actual brick and mortar stores, they say something around 2,200. I don't know how accurate that is, but the most we ever had a one book get sold into was 1,489 different shops, right? So, we're hitting roughly 2/3 of the stores, right, that are in there. So for us, that's kind of how we started looking at it: is how much footprint do we have? How much penetration into this market do we have? Because something I think that we learned relatively quickly was that the convention market is one thing, but the Diamond market and these fans, like your Wednesday Warriors, are something entirely different, right? And we were really good at getting convention buyers to buy comic books, and the reason for that is that those many people who are going to a convention are going because of the experience of the convention, and they're not necessarily like, I love Batman, and come hell or high water, I'm buying Batman, and if it's a creative team I don't like, I'm going to buy it to fucking hate read it. I don't care because I love Batman, right? They're there because they want to see and do new things. And we're right there being like, hey, this is a brand new thing. Why don't you come check it out? I'll tell you. I wrote it and I'll sign it for you and, sell it to you. So we got really good at that. And now we had to get good at trying to be like, okay, so there's 1.2 million people who walk into a comic book store on any given Wednesday in the United States to buy a comic book. A huge chunk of those people have X to spend. They have this budget. And that budget is already set from 2 months ago, because those people are mostly running a pull list or a subscription service, and they're already spent that money 2 months in advance, right? So you got to somehow break into that and get them to be like, look, instead of buying the 4th X book this month, I want you to try this other thing instead, right? And this is a very hard nut to crack, right? So there's a couple of ways you can do it. One, you could go down the collectible route, which we certainly did and had some real success doing that, right? Like very limited numbers, only available from certain retailers and things like that. And we had a lot of success with that. The other way is to try to get retailers to push your stuff. And that was kind of the one that we really try to do, is be like, look, if you're a retailer, do carry us, we've got these creators all over the country. We'll come to your store. Like, we'll hand sell the books that you ordered if that's what it takes for you to give us a shot and put our book in the pull list of the people that you think will enjoy it, right? So, for us, our very first year in Diamond, we only did 3 books a month. The second year, we expanded to 10, and then we're doing 12 releases monthly now. Well, not right now, obviously, but right up until this, we're doing 12 releases monthly.
But I think we should also kind of I think this brings up a really good point to kind of segue to. I'll let you finish your thought here, but I just wanted to say.
Okay. I'm sort of just rambling anyway.
Oh, no, dude, you are not rambling, dude. I'm learning a lot right now, because my experience with Diamond has been, I've done everything on my own, and you can't fight every battle and win by yourself. You need people to help you out from time to time. But we as of this point have not found a publisher in the U.S. to distribute for us through Diamond. But my personal experience with Diamond was very much like what you're explaining, and it's very hard when you have one title. You got to have a multitude of different things going on. But you were mentioning you guys gradually built this, and now Diamond has obviously hit the pause button on their distribution, but that has not stopped you guys. You've done Free Comic Book Week, which ends today, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and today, as of last night, we were over 7,000 books had gone out.
That's incredible. Okay, so what's the origin of Free Comic Book Week, and what are the benefits that you see coming from it as a publisher, and with everything you're doing right now?
Okay, so I'm going to go back in time a little bit to when I mentioned earlier when those first 3 shows got canceled. So for us, that represented about $32,000 of lost money.
I remember seeing an article about that, by the way. What you guys had mentioned something like this, or I saw a Facebook post or something.
So that just those first 3 shows represented a huge chunk of money that, because we're I mean, I've got 9 full-time employees, across, because we also have Deepwater Games. We do tabletop gaming. We have N3 Art Designs. We do different products and merchandise. We do mass market distribution of all this stuff. We run our own warehouse, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, this was cash flow is an important thing. So when this happened, we were immediately just like, okay, what do we think is going to happen? And I was definitely leaning towards like, okay, let's pump the brakes. I was in Ireland at the time because Dublin Comic Con was that next weekend, and I'd gone out there a week early with my son and my father as a vacation. So that show got canceled while I was already there. And so all this kind of like initial COVID craziness, I was out of the country, which is like the worst possible place to be, as it turns out. And so I thought, well, let's just hold on. We'll see what happens. And then it was just like every single day, it was more of the shows started dropping. And so for us, we're looking at this in terms of like, okay, let's pretend we lose everything through the end of May. So what does that mean? Well, that's probably around $250,000 to $300,000 in gross sales that we're not going to have. So that really hurts our bottom line. And I don't want to lay anybody off, and I want to survive no matter what. So it wasn't me. It was Matt and Nolan. Two guys on the team were like, look, what we think we do is we call the distributors and we get all of our products into our hands as fast as we can, and we pivot hard into doing our own thing. And I was like, okay, well, we've never been afraid to try to do that. So that's what we did. We rented out another building next to ours, and we just had all of our products just got shipped into us from all the various distributors while they were still operational. And then we kind of took all the money we had left and started investing it into marketing and advertising and things like that. And we were able to essentially just grow our direct business and our direct. So, we've always had the ability to, because we never signed an exclusive with Diamond, we've always had the ability, and we've always had a few hundred stores that bought from us directly. But like the month of March and April it was like 10x what it normally was, because now tons of stores are unable to get books, but like, well, we still have all our stuff, like when Diamond said that like, hey, we're not accepting shipments on April books, we had all our April books, because those had already gone to print. We already had a PO for those the month before, so we had all that stuff. So we kind of took a hard left turn to survive, and then when we had a lot of success with that, and that worked out really well. I wouldn't say that it's been at the end of the year, I suspect that our year is going to potentially not hit our goals, because we're not doing as well as we would have expected, given that we would have done 30 shows over the course of these 3 months, and many of them are monsters. Some of them are our biggest, most profitable shows, and also had distribution and game distribution, everything else. But given that we're only having one person go in at a time to pack packages or whatever, we've managed to survive, and we managed to do okay. We've managed to keep the lights on and keep payroll moving and all that. So I'm really happy about that.
I'm happy about that too, man. Like, honestly, just hearing, because I'm going through the same thing, but I don't have full-time. I don't have a full-time staff that I have to worry about, and making these decisions, these really difficult decisions, these hard left turns. There's a whole story behind that too. I know it because I grind in a different way, but it's not as simple as what you're saying. You're talking about finding a way to reach your audience who are all going through and dealing with their crises the same way we are in their own lives, and finding a way to direct their attention from comic shops, from conventions, directly to a different place, which is so fucking hard to do. I cannot underline it enough. So the fact that you guys have managed to do it, it's incredible.
Yeah, and we also, we're still doing a thing where if you buy something from our store, you can put in the name of your local comic book store in the note. And
yes.
We send 25% of the profit from the sale to that store.
That's fantastic, because you know what that's also doing? You're not just surviving, you're building. And you're building relationships with these retailers. And that is so important going into the future, because you know as well as I do that everything's going to open back up. Conventions will return. And, it's just a matter of time.
We want that direct market back.
Oh, of course. Yeah,
so we've done all this. We've made these changes. We've kind of just completely shifted how we're doing business so that we can survive. And then we got to thinking about we should do. It was driven by a couple of things. One was that we were bursting at the seams with stuff. We just need to get rid of some stuff. So that's why if you look at the list of stuff we did for Free Comic Book Day, so it's a mix of older and new stuff. And some of the stuff that maybe we overprinted but from earlier or that we've had around. But a big part of it was all right, excuse me, we are running out of room. We need to make some room here. And two, it sucks that Free Comic Book Day isn't happening, because one of the most important things to us as a company, and I think that guys like you who are prominent self-publishers and other small presses, almost anybody, one of the most important things that we can do is to get new readers into the hobby.
Absolutely. And just so people don't make the mistake, Free Comic Book Day is pivotal for all comic book creators, whether you're at the top or independently publishing everything.
It's how you can get a new reader.
Yep, absolutely.
For one time a year, every shop is going to get inundated with brand new readers. Now, a lot of store owners will complain and they'll be like, yeah, most of those people never come back. True, absolutely true. But one or two of them do, right? And this is an opportunity to find a new reader. And for us, we look at that as look, new readers are what we need, right? Because this 1.2 million people per week, and a big chunk of that is owned by Marvel and DC. The best way for us to do better is to grow the pie, not try to get people to buy less of whatever they're doing. Because I kind of mentioned earlier how difficult it is to break into whatever person's amount of money that they're going to spend is, right? Let's just try to get more people into the hobby, get more people interested in reading these stories. Then you have a better chance that they're going to like whatever it is you're putting out, So we look at Free Comic Book Day as, if you take into account what we as a company do and all our creators, we do between 15 and 20 different events across the country for Free Comic Book Day, and not having it just sucks, and it sucks for the industry. And so we were just kind of thinking all right, is there something that we can do that would be cool that also at the same time would help us blow out some of our backstock and make some room, because we've got all these new shipments of everything coming in and we literally need pallet space. So that's how kind of Free Comic Book Week got born. That was I don't know, maybe 5 weeks ago is when we first started talking about it and how we would do it, and how everything would work logistically. And and so we just did, and it seemed like it worked really well. So for instance, one of the things we focused on, Deepwater Gaming, which is the gaming side of the company. We have a couple of games that are extremely popular, and but something we've noticed is that you'd think that there's a lot more crossover between tabletop gaming and comics than there is, right? And they don't really cross over. We saw a lot of crossover. We saw a lot of people came and bought Welcome to expansions because they were on sale, and also saw, there's free comics, and they'd pick up one or two. Right. So at the end of the day, the goal is still the same, to try to get some new readers in the hobby, new people, grow the pie. But it ended up going really well. For us, Nolan, who's the guy who kind of planned it all, he told me that his goal was let's try to give away 5,000 units. And as of last night, we'd given away 7,000. So I think we did really well. I'm really happy with how it went. We got a ton of a ton of people. We got a ton of like, we got like a ton of positive messages to our customer service email, which is
Of course.
a rarity. People being like, hey, thank you for doing this. Cool. So it was, people had a lot of fun with it. I think it's something that we can refine. I think the creators had a lot of fun with it. We tried to put it in a way such that, the creators could look at it not as a way of like, well, you're giving away, 1,000 units of mine that I could make money on. We tried to look at it as like, we're giving away 1,000 units of that are going to drive people to come back and buy the trade. So we tried to do stuff that like the trade was either out or on its way and things like that.
I agree with that strategy 100%. That you have to give a little to get a lot more back.
Well, and I'm sure in terms of the nuts and bolts, the profit margins on trades are that's really
yeah, that's I mean, I found that that single issues are an easier sell because they're cheaper, but trades, this costs $3 to print, and I can sell it for up to $25. So I'm making bank when I sell a trade. Whereas a single issue, this is $3, and it cost me 30 cents to print, which is still a nice markup, but it's not the same thing as when you get that trade. It's like every time you sell one of these, you see dollar signs pop up.
Yeah, well, you got to convince way more people to make the same amount of money.
Exactly. And giving away that first issue just that book is a great way to hook them. It's a great way to show appreciation for comic book readers in general, because during this time, of everything that's going on right now, people are hungry for content, and you guys are still generating, you're still putting stuff out there. And like I said, you guys put out beautiful books. I recently picked up The Fuhrer and the Tramp, and I'm actually interviewing Sean McCardle this week, and that book is gorgeous. And just the way it's presented in black and white, and the storytelling. And I'm also a big fan of Dan Doherty's work on Touching Evil, and
Touching Evil is great.
Yeah. So Frank Gogol has a question for us, and I think we should for you.
I'm sure.
What do you look for in a creator beyond just creative talent and a dope book?
That's actually a good question. So the sad fact of the matter is that finding good ideas and great art is not hard. That's the easier thing to accomplish. I can go to any major show virtually any weekend of the year outside of now and walk up and down Artist Alley and find great artists and great story ideas. What is a little harder is finding someone who is going to survive the grind of what this industry is, right? I think that there's, and I certainly had it, and I think a lot of people do. I think there's this misconception that like breaking into the comic industry is very difficult, and I don't think it's very difficult at all. I think it's a kind of a very welcoming industry. I think that if you can, don't go to McDonald's and Burger King for 6 months and save all that money instead, and you've got $3,000, find an artist, make a 20-page comic and print 200 of them, buy a table at your local show, welcome to the industry you're in. And the vast majority of people will be welcoming and happy to have you, right? Because we all know how hard it is to do it. So getting in is not hard. You can essentially do it with very little money and I hate to say it, but you almost really don't even really need any talent to do it. You could just
you don't. I mean, you just have to have a basic concept. Yeah, you're right.
But staying in it is much, much harder. That's really where the hill is. You're right. It's like this little tiny hill to get in, and then there's this steep mountain to climb to stay here, and get to where you're like gonna be making, if you're trying to make some kind of living at it, or or whatever, it's extremely challenging. And so what I do, if somebody sends me something, and one, we don't take digital submissions. So though if this continues much longer, we probably will start. But what we did is we would only take submissions at shows, right? And the way I look at that is that we weren't hard to find. We're at almost every major city in the United States. Like, if you want us to give me something, come to a show and give it to me.
And I can't tell you how much that means personally, because when I first started out, that's what I would do, right? But I after a very short while, I kind of felt like, publishers didn't want me approaching them directly at a show because they were there to make money. But here you guys are accepting it.
Definitely there to make money.
No, of course. But the
that's
aspect
where we
of
find our people, right? Like,
right.
The people I want more road warriors. I want to come in and like, hey, here's this book, and I've made 3 issues under my own power, and I love this, and I think it's great, and I can be like, you know what, this is great, and we'll take it, and I got to have you get one more done, and then we'll start releasing it, but you're going to keep doing what you're doing, right? You're not going to kick back and wait.
Yeah. You're not throwing your legs up and being like, you take care of the sales. Yeah.
Right. So, for us, it was like, I want people who care enough that they're going to come to a show. Like, that's how much you have to put some effort into this. You have to come to a show. You have to find us. You have to hand me your thing or take your pitch or whatever it is and actually give it to us. And then from there, if it's something that I'm really interested in, which there was 2 at C2E2 that I got that I think were quite good. Then we start passing it around amongst other people who kind of work in editorial and just get other opinions. But then we actually look at the creators themselves. We look at their social media, and not in a way of like I don't give a shit how many followers you have. I don't care. I don't care about any of that, right? Like, what I care about is, like, are you engaging with the followers that you have? Are you engaging with the fan base that you have? If people seem like they're passionate about the thing that you're making, are you talking to that person? Are you passionate about the thing that you're making, right? Like, I don't want people that are like too cool for their own stuff, like, I want people who are talking about their stuff and engaging with people. And I don't care if they're just starting or if they're a long time into it. Like, I want people who are engaged and are pushing their title forward. So for us, the creators that kind of really do well with us are creators who are already, kind of
established and are doing this. And
yeah, I don't want it to make, because we do sign a lot of people that were their first publisher, right? So I don't want to make it sound like, well, you already have to be something. You already have to do this. You already have
right. They're coming to you because they're looking for that. But what you're looking for, from what I understand, are creators that are going to help continue to build what you're doing, so that people who love, let's say, Floppy Cop, are going to come over to your booth and buy The Fuhrer and the Tramp. It's building off of that, so that it helps the creators, and the titles of those other books are going to come back to those creators too. Everybody helps each other out. And like what you were saying before about the pie gets bigger. And now
I'm trying to build a tower,
Fuck yeah, brother.
And every creator is a brick,
Absolutely.
I'm looking for solid bricks.
Hell yeah.
And we invest a lot in our creators,
I can see that, because again, it's the quality of the books, and the books that you guys print up, they look gorgeous. They all look great. Oh, hi. Got a special guest appearance. I apologize for that.
That's my wife. She's looking for something. I don't know what.
No worries. It's all good, man. Yeah, I think I may have met her actually at C2E2, because it was the year last year, and they had us because the small press guys, you guys are small press, but you guys have like you're on the main publishing area ground. Yep. But guys like me, we were set up in this one area that was like way knocked back, and it was
one row against the edge.
Yes.
Ooh, that's rough. That's
Oh,
tough.
it was rough. It was a rough year. And I remember she was walking by and she was very sweet. And, she told me where you guys were. And I never had a chance to go and talk to you guys, because it's just when we're working and we're grinding and then the day is over and, you go on and you do your other thing. You either meet up with a bunch of people and go network, or you go back to your, hotel and work or sleep or do whatever you got to do. But everything is basically like, it just all kind of like blurs together after a certain point. So,
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely relate. I've gotten to the point where, like, I used to. It's strange. Like the convention. I mean, it's weird right now, because right now I kind of miss it. Right.
Oh, dude, I fucking miss it. I don't know. I can't wait to get back out.
Yeah, right this second I kind of miss it, but at the same time, like I also wouldn't. I'd never do another year where I did over 40. Like that was way too much, and I was definitely burned out.
And I understand that too, by the way. I was pretty burned out by the end of last year myself,
Well, yeah, because I mean, people don't realize how exhausting it is, and because you're trying to be on, and
all the time.
And that's kind of another big thing with it, is that a lot of the creators, they end up doing their conventions they do with us, because we're all over the place. So, people, a lot of times people would, they would rather do the show with SourcePoint rather than have their own artist alley space, So those guys really come and, really work, put in their 10 hours a day talking to hundreds of people. And yeah, but it's a hard life. I would equate it to being a touring rock band. One of those things that I think people think is glamorous and fun until you do it for a few months, and then you're like, "No, this sucks."
and it does, especially when you do bad shows. Like I was at the show Big Easy Con. I don't know if you heard about this.
You were there.
Okay, you were there. That was painful. That was just like, what was it? Friday 2 to 9. And normally you think about a show, it's like, that's a good Friday 2 to 9. It's like, it's not 10 to 7, but it's like, it's 2 to 9. It's a good amount of time. And it's New Orleans. So you're thinking like, okay, cool. Like, cause I've done shows out there before. That fucking show Friday was dead. Saturday dead. Sunday, like it was horrible. Oh man, it was a tough show.
Well, and the crazy thing about that too, is that the company that ran that show is,
yes, the Awesome Con people.
That's Awesome Con and Rose City in Portland.
Yeah.
Both of those shows are baller.
Yeah.
They know how to do a show, but yeah, we probably don't have a ton of time, but I would say that we were approaching, I think, a moment of bubble bursting with the convention scene anyway. Like before this,
dude, that's exactly what I was thinking too. And you know what I did? I took it as an experience to learn, and I just worked off of the people that were there. When I saw people, I pitched them, and that's it. And
the people were there. That's all you.
Yeah. And and then they had the fucking the state people coming around to make sure we paid our taxes. They had armed people on the convention floor, and there was probably more armed people on the convention floor than there were attendees. It was, and those kinds of situations, those shows, I totally agree with you. They get to be a grind. They're difficult, and it's tough, regardless of the fact that you're learning. But this is also time that you could be spending with your family. This is time that you could be working on other things that are more productive, but yet you're stuck on this front and you have to fucking see it through. And it's not going to be a profitable weekend. And, you just kind of look at it. And the thing that I found interesting was the following weekend was Grand Rapids, and I had never done that show. And it was such a contrast from Big Easy that I was like, this is like New York Comic Con. It was like, I had such a blast.
Yeah, that's a really good show. Yeah, we do that one every year. Grand Rapids is really good. It's a tough, I don't know. I would never want to be a con promoter.
Neither would I.
I don't know what, I don't know what necessarily makes a good show versus a bad. I can tell you that, like, you know, one of the best company, Reed Pop, right? They put on New York, C2E2, Emerald City. They're SuperCon in Miami now. You know, they're one of the best, right? Their shows are monsters. The first year at Keystone was a
I've heard.
monster, you know. Now, to their credit, they gave almost everybody who was there got credit to come back the next year. The next year was still not great, but was better.
Well, it takes time. It takes time. You know, Reed Pop, you know, they really have a lot of manpower to kind of help build up their shows, whereas some shows don't. And I think that, you know, I forget the name of the people who put on Awesome Con and all this, but they're Left Field Media. They have a great staff. They're building up stuff. You know, it's very hard.
Yeah,
you know,
and I don't know what happened with the New Orleans show. I don't know if it was just bad timing or what, but yeah, I don't know if they're going to go back.
Well, here's a final question for you, and then we're going to have to wrap it up. But
sure.
I want to ask you, what is your outlook? When do you think we're going to start seeing conventions again? And, you know, when are you hoping that we'll all be able to get back out there?
I think that there will probably start being. So I think one of two things happens. One, they start reopening stuff, and people start going back, and they start having. And they start seeing an increase in infections again. I think that that's going to lock everything right back down again, probably through the fall. If that doesn't happen, then I would suspect that we'll probably start seeing shows, you know, pop up again in August and September. At this point right now, I'm not really expecting to see any major crowds. You know, I'm even sort of cautiously expecting a pretty soft New York Comic Con, which is normally, you know,
that's pretty optimistic, you know,
Yeah.
in most people's minds, you know, right now. And, you know, it's a hard reality to face, but
I don't think we're going to see normalcy. I mean, in terms of like just humanity, I hope that there are things that never change, right? I do think that people have been, you know, maybe I'm just lucky with the interactions I've had, but I feel like a lot of people have been kinder and more considerate of their fellow human beings through this whole thing than they normally are. And so there's some stuff I hope never goes back to normal. In terms of giant crowds of people, I think that we might be a year away from it being sort of back to normal, to where, you know, your regular person is like, I'm down to go stand in a hallway with 100,000 other people, you know, all spreading germ. I mean, those things are disease factories anyway, right? Like, we all know that. We've all
right on. Yeah.
We've all walked out of a convention and been like, well, I've got strep throat now, or well, I got the flu now, or whatever.
I got fucking mono. I don't know how the hell I got mono. I didn't kiss anybody at these shows, but I got mono at some point. And it was just
right, like you can, like, they're just disease factories anyway.
Yeah.
You know? So I think it could be a little while before things are truly back to normal and people truly feel comfortable kind of coming back out. On the other hand, I think that when it does, I think that it's going to come back in kind of a big way. You know, I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity comes up, you know, when this.
Yeah, when this all blows over.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Travis, I have to tell you, it was the one thing I'm happy about, given all this, is that I finally had a chance to meet you. And honestly, you live up to every expectation. Because prior
It's important that you keep the bar low.
God, well, no, the bar was set extremely high by many people who know you and consider you their best friend, and consider you to just be one really awesome dude. So thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to meet with me today, and I look forward to seeing you in person and shaking your hand and getting to know you better as time goes on.
Yeah, swing by next time.
Absolutely. Do me a favor. Tell us all where we can find you. It's not like we need to know it, but I just want to give you your moment to do one last shout out or whatever you need to do.
So anywhere you can find Source Point Press, as that's what we are on across social media. Me personally, I'm Travis McINTIRE. I'm pretty easy to find. On Facebook, I'm at Team McINTIRE1 on Twitter, and at Travis the Beard on Instagram.
Awesome. My brother, thank you so much again for your time today. And why don't you hang out back on backstage for a moment, and I'm going to close out. And just thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. What an episode! What a guest, guys! Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow we got Brian K. Morris coming on 3 p.m. Central. See you then. Onward to victory.